Hi there. Today we're going to be talking about the worst thing your computer can have, an underperforming power supply. I'm Steve. This is TQA Weekly. And I get it. Many YouTubers out there are doing benchmarks of computers, graphics cards, processors, RAM, and all that, with power supplies exceeding 1,000 watts. You definitely don't necessarily need a 1,000 plus watts power supply. But to be fair, the alternative is far more insidious and dangerous to your computer. A power supply that lacks sufficient power output will have a few issues that of course will only affect some users. We'll call these power users. These are the kinds of people that you might be part of. Gamers, video editors, graphic artists, or anybody that does power intensive tasks with their computer. It's quite possible your grandparents can have the same build as you and use a smaller power supply and never suffer a single problem, because the hardest game they might be playing is solitaire. Now, what happens if your power supply is incapable of providing sufficient power for your computer? This is the first question. And the answer is simple. Your computer becomes unstable. Unstable computers suffer from a lot of problems, and some of these are cooling issues, data corruption problems, and of course, power issues. Some of these can lead to blue screens of death, or your computer simply turning off and restarting. The restarting is due to a power state setting in your BIOS that is actually set up by default to turn on the computer whenever there's a power outage. You can set that to off and the computer wouldn't turn back on. Now, it is possible for some people to have an inferior power supply and never suffer these because they just don't push the computer hard enough. But if you're a power user using basically an underperforming power supply, you risk damaging your hardware. This is why it's an insidious, dangerous problem for your computer. But you might be asking, but what happens if I buy an overpowered power supply? By the way, nothing bad. I mean, except that your wallet loses some thickness. A power supply takes in AC power from the wall, converts it to DC power, and it actually converts it into three different kinds of voltages: the 3.1, 5, and 12 volts. It only generates the power the computer needs, and if the power supply is modern, it likely does have an 80 plus rating. The higher the power output possible by your power supply, the more power efficient, the cooler, and the more stable the power output is. That is crazy. This means that a higher end, higher power wattage power supply might actually need less power than the smaller ones to generate the 3.3, 5, and 12 volts necessary to run your computer and all of its internal hardware. And because of this, because it can also be doing this and run cooler, contributes less to the ambient temperature inside of your box. Meaning that while it is a little bit more expensive, and no, you don't necessarily need really big power supplies with high wattage, there's a reason why many YouTubers out there still stick these into their computers, especially their test benches, because at least they are guaranteed that they never hit the ceiling with power and that they're always being power efficient and keeping the computer cooler. So if you have to choose between cheaping out on your power supply or anything else in your computer, my suggestion is spend a little bit more on your power supply. It is better to have a little bit more headroom than to burn out your computer, making it an expensive paperweight. Like this episode if you like it, dislike it if you didn't, share with those you think can benefit from this, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions for topics, email me at ask@tqaweekly.com, drop it down in the comments below, or go to my website, tqaweekly.com, where you can do other things like see the show notes of this episode, past others, find other ways of subscribing, and of course, use a contact form and email me directly. And if you want to see me play video games, go to my Twitch at twitch.tv/zaxis1981. Don't forget to follow, and the schedule is down on that page. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.